the Patriots are now in a coaching search. And I told you on the show yesterday, I don't think it's going to take very long. I'm intrigued that I know it's only been a day and a half, but they've only requested one interview. We think the Vrabel thing is coming any day now. And there's been talks about Liam Cohen from Tampa, the offensive assistant in Tampa. But as of right now, the only guy they have requested an interview for is Ben Johnson, which, again, okay. Personally, after what we just went through, and this has changed for me over the last few weeks of the season, I'm leaning towards someone who has been a head coach before, just because of, the being in over his head. Like, that's what we saw with Mayo. But if you are going to take a risk at someone who has not been a head coach before, Ben Johnson is the guy to take the risk for. Like, if we're being honest, all things being equal, like, I'm okay with that more exciting risk. Because like Mayo, we didn't know anything about him. We didn't know anything about his philosophy, really. He was a positions coach. He's a linebackers coach. He wasn't even a coordinator. And I don't even think he was a play caller. I think Steven was the play caller, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong there. So it was like you didn't even know anything about the guy. Ben Johnson has been a high-end coordinator the last couple of years on the offensive side of the ball. You're building your team around this young quarterback. Like, there is something salivating around Ben Johnson working with Drake May. Like, that is quite a sexy thing if you're a Patriots fan looking at the future of this. But Robert Kraft went to the podium yesterday, right after our show, to talk about the firing of Jerod Mayo. And I got to be honest with you guys, I think he handled it really well. Like, I'm not here to butter the Kraft's bread anymore. That's been apparent if you've listened to the show over the last couple of weeks and months. I've been very critical of the Krafts and how they've handled this situation, as I think you should be as well as a Patriots fan. Like, it all comes down to the ownership group. But Robert Kraft went to the podium yesterday, and he didn't BS it. He didn't fluff it up. I think we've got the sound here. He goes to the podium, and this is the first thing he says about the firing of Jerod Mayo. Like, is it a bit of lip service? Probably, sure. But like, I will say this about the Krafts. Like, you can tell when they are being genuine. And I think that's almost worked against them in ways, because then you could tell when they're being disingenuous. I think Robert Kraft is being genuine here. And I think he realized this. He and Jonathan realized this over the last couple of weeks of the season, that they made the wrong call. It was too much too quickly, that Jerod was in over his head. And I do think there's criticism within that, in terms of clearly they had this firing ready to go before the game on Sunday. And I think you should have, if that was a decision you made after the Chargers game a couple weeks ago, you need to fire him then. There was just too much on the line to let him go out there and feel like he's coaching for his job, and that his coaches are coaching for their jobs. Because at that point, the season is over. Like, if you could forfeit a game in the NFL, you should have. And instead, you let him go out there and coach like he's coaching for his job, and they messed it up. They ruined it for you. You don't just lose the number one pick, you drop to 4. I actually thought Simmons had a great analogy for this. He was like, you traded the number 1 overall pick for the number 4 overall pick and got nothing in return, right? You didn't get a player out of it. This was not Celtics, Sixers, Markelle Fultz, Jason Tatum. Like, you traded number 1 for number 4 and got absolutely nothing in return. That's not good business. That's horrible. That sets your franchise back, which is what is happening here. And while I think Kraft did the right thing at the podium on Monday, it doesn't erase what they said a year ago. Because let's take you back to January 17th of 2024 when they were hiring Jerod Mayo, because he's not the guy now, but 51 and a half weeks ago, he was the guy, apparently, because this is what the Krafts had to say just under a year ago.
I think we got someone very special who understands how to manage young people today. I mean, the world is different than 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. And, you know, in all our businesses, we try to create a culture that people want to stay with and be there long term. And I think that Jerod has the makeup and chemistry and is genuine. What he has is genuine. And just think about how he got elected captain in his second year with us when we had tremendous veterans. And I think he went for 7 years. He was captain in a tremendous period. And then he went out on his own in business to get a change. And then it's just, I think we're ready to kick butt.
That from a year ago sounds like on the rare occasion when I come onto this show and have no notes and have done no research and just have kind of a topic. And you're like, well, yeah, I mean, look, it was good. He was good. He became a captain. We had a bunch of good players on that team and he was a captain. Like it's the writing was on the wall. And I think a lot of us did realize it last January of like, really? Like this is the guy? You're replacing the greatest of all time with Jerod Mayo? Like, no disrespect to Mayo as a person or a player or even a football mind, but like, really? You're gonna make him the head coach of the New England Patriots? And this is going to be like part of your long-term rebuild is to go with this guy? But I'll give some credit where credit is due. You punted an entire season and you got a worse draft pick than you had last year, but I think Kraft handled it well at the podium. It does kind of remind me in a backwards way of the way the Ford family handled it after Dan Campbell's first year, because there was a lot of calls for him to be fired. And they went to the podium and said, no, you know what? Dan Campbell's our guy. We've got a vision here. It was not going to be done in 1 year. And we believe in the plan that he's building. It's that kind of, genuine nature that Kraft went to the podium with on Monday, which is with a completely different situation. He goes, I got this wrong. And finally, I think what's the best part about it for Patriots fans is there's some accountability, because there's been no accountability for the last year and a half. You fire Belichick and you say, then you use the next couple of months to say, well, Belichick got us in this bad situation. Look what he left us with. Look at how bare the cupboard is. And then Jerod Mayo is throwing his players under the bus and his coaches under the bus. And the ownership is nowhere to be found. Elliott Wolf, people don't even know what he looks like. I mean, he's not available to the media. And so it's just this constant passing the buck, which is just so the opposite of what made the Patriots great. The culture that you thought you were latching onto to continue some Patriots greatness is just the opposite of what we saw this past year. Again, it went from do your job to know your place in a year. It went from Super Bowl championships to, oh, it's so great. He lets us ride bikes in the locker room, and there's couches in the locker room. Like, it's little things, but it's going against the culture that the Krafts thought was just going to carry over into the Mayo era. I said it on the Pete Souza show. You can check that out as well. That's every weekday at 10 a.m. Central Time here on the Rogue Media Network. But like, they just thought they were going to ride the coattails of this culture that was gone when Belichick was gone. And Belichick had a great moment on the McAfee show yesterday. I'm not going to play the clip because I don't want to be demonetized. But he said, he gets asked about, and plus he starts talking about the Packers in the clip. I don't want to do that. But they ask him about, hey, what's your thoughts on the things that happened in New England? Jerod Mayo out after 1 year. And he says, look, I don't have to say anything about the decision making in New England. That's Robert Kraft, Jonathan Kraft, Robin Glazer. Whoa, Belichick just dropping the Robin Glazer hammer in there. That's very intentional from Belichick. And it kind of highlights what the problem still is with the Patriots is, okay, now you've got the boogeyman out of the room in Jerod Mayo, but there's more structural damage here, in the people that are in place in the front office. And I don't think this organization is bold enough to get rid of Elliott Wolf with a draft coming up, a draft that he is scouted for. I don't think they're willing to do that. And like, I do get that to some respect, but I think overwhelmingly fans and analysts will think this organization needs a clean break. They need a fresh start. And they also need someone whom their new coach can coexist with, because clearly this was an arranged marriage with Jerod Mayo and Elliott Wolf, and also Jerod Mayo with some of his assistants. And the last time you had that was in 2000 with Bill Belichick and Bobby Greer. And that was an arranged marriage, and it didn't work. You went 5-11. Belichick suddenly gets control, and they're winning Super Bowls. So I think it's really worth looking at when you can cut ties with Elliott Wolf and move on from Elliott Wolf and find new player personnel development. Because I'm not going to lie to you guys, I had no idea that the assistant GM with the Kansas City Chiefs, winners of the last 2 Super Bowls and 3 of the last 5, is like has a bunch of Patriots ties, New England ties. Mike Borgonzi, who is now interviewing to be the GM of the Jets, is a Massachusetts guy. I think he's from Everett. He was a player personnel guy with BC when they made back-to-back ACC championship games. He worked with Pioli. Pioli brought him to Kansas City 15 years ago. Like, there's a bunch of Patriots ties there. He went to Brown. And yet he is now interviewing for the GM of the Jets. Like, that is perfect right there, man. Pioli disciple, Massachusetts guy, assistant GM for the best franchise in the league. And we're here with Elliott Wolf, absentee Elliott Wolf, because his dad was pretty good. Ugh, it shakes me to my core. There are still corrections that need to be made within this Patriots organization. I'm telling you, there are. And it's not just getting rid of big bad Jerod Mayo. That's just the first step.
We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. And if you like this video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a ton. You can follow me on Twitter here for some more outrageous Boston sports takes coming to you every weekday at noon Eastern time. And then after that, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are Rogue Media Sports.